Well, hey, and welcome to week 8 of Walk Like Jesus. What a great and timely teaching this week for us as we applied how to have intentional and loving relationships with people around us. You know, right now we know that our world is a loud and very much disrupted place, and people are shouting for love to be shared, or they're shouting for justice to be had. And what we see through Jesus' example throughout this study, and especially this week, is that real change comes from relationships. In fact, that was his model for us. As we looked into the life of Jesus, we see that it was through intentional and loving relationships that he was able to teach, to lead, to empower, and then to send out the disciples to the world. You see, Jesus didn't rely on the followers that he had in the crowd. Jesus spent his time in intentional, loving relationships with a few. And the byproduct of that was life change. In fact, life change that has continued to right now. For us today, we are the byproduct of an intentional, loving relationship that the gospel was shared in our life. And for each of us, that might look different. For some of us, that was a friend. Some of us, that was a family that we grew up in. Others, it was a really difficult time and someone spoke truth and life into us. Others, it was at a revival in a tent. I don't know what your story is, but I guarantee you that it came down to an intentional, loving relationship of someone inviting you to trust in Jesus Christ, or you realizing that there was no other option for your life, and so you looked to the one that you believed loved you as you were. And so here's what I want us to really focus in on as we get ready to talk about our time and study this week, is to really define what an intentional and loving relationship is. 1 Corinthians 13 does a great job of teaching us what love is, and I think you're going to spend some time tonight talking through those different aspects of it. But what does an intentional, loving relationship look like in your circle of influence right now? On day 5, you were asked to kind of look at some of the folks that you have in your life right now when it comes to a family member or a friend or a coworker, someone who needs to know the love of Jesus Christ, and how are you applying that intentional relationship to them? There's a great model that Jesus gives us called eternal CPR, rather, and that was great to kind of dig into that together. And really what it means is to cultivate, to plant, and then to reap. It's very much similar to what you do in a garden. And I can tell you that the cultivating process, the tilling of the soil, the breaking of the hard ground is always the hardest. The planting is definitely time-consuming, but the joy of reaping that harvest, seeing the fruit come from the ground, and then enjoying that on our plate and being able to experience that with those that we love, there's nothing better. And the same goes for the way in which we do that into the lives of others. Yes, those things may be difficult, they may take time, but if our focus is an intentional, loving relationship, then it's worth it. But remember this, there is nothing that you and I can do that has any meaning or really any type of value for the long term if it isn't centered in the love of Jesus Christ and being compelled by what he's done for us in our lives. And so my hope is this, is that as we look more like Jesus, that we would focus our heart, our mind, our strength, our time each day, not into the things that we feel that we have to do, but the things that God has called us to do. And more than anything, he has called us to be in intentional, loving relationships with him and with one another. Before we get finished with our intro this week, I do want to challenge you, if you haven't yet opened up that Walk Like Jesus app, or you don't know about that, you can ask your group leader. That's a great way for you to just kind of take an assessment of where you're at in your walk with Jesus Christ, especially coming into this final week. And then also a great place that you can set some reminders of how to be praying for and engaging in conversations with those that God has called you to through those circles of influence. And then lastly, I want to let you know that in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from today, we will have a really special closeout event for Walk Like Jesus that will be on site at Memphis Christian Church. If you are one of our digital group members, that will also be broadcasted live. You'll get information about that from your group leader throughout this week and into next week, so that you can prepare well for coming and hearing and being encouraged and celebrating this great season of study as we desire to look and to walk more like Jesus. May we multiply out from here as faithful followers of Jesus Christ. Have a great time tonight.